Shalom, my bitches. Myandis here at NFY bringing you The Cameraman by Feather Fallen. When I was first told of the posting, I thought they were mad. I still think they were mad. There we were in an active war zone, in one of the bloodiest conflicts of the last 1,000 years, and they wanted to stick a civilian in our unit. He waved away the question before it could be asked. Yeah, I know he'd gone through boot camp, but look at it from my perspective. I'd had 14 years of combat experience, and here was some fresh-faced recruit from some race that nobody had ever heard of, and they wouldn't even be holding a gun. It was absurd. Obviously, the first thing we did was try to look them up. Aside from their race's join date and some nonsense conspiracy theories, all we had was that they were probably built for running. We had nothing about their military traditions, nothing about their tactics or philosophies, nothing about their other physical capabilities, nothing but that one fact, which of course did very little to assuage our fears about the replacement. Most of us thought we were being given a coward. They weren't even going to fight, hailing from a race that was known for their ability to run. Evidently, they were a flight risk, that they were weak, that they were a non-combat role because they were afraid, and that they had no place in the conflict at large. That they would be in the way. First impressions were actually better than expected, but not by much. They'd spent most of the first meeting cracking jokes about the planet's low gravity, and we were, maybe not relieved at how small they were, but we were all probably thinking something like, at least they'll be able to keep out of the way. It wasn't until we'd actually met up that they'd even bothered to tell us why he was here, that the brass was looking to drum up support and wanted some cool visuals to show to the masses. A picture of troops here, video of an explosion or 3 there, and so on. Our new pal was just the guy they wanted to take them. We spent a lot of time just heading between drills in those first few days. But then there wasn't much excitement at all in our area for that month anyway. Even when things started heating up, he did a good job of staying out of the way, disappearing during skirmishes and then materializing sometime after the fight, with a couple of rolls safely in his bag. He did his job, we did ours, and I honestly didn't take much notice of him for just about the entire deployment. The general grinned, but for some reason, I get the feeling that that's not the part of the story you're interested in. He took a moment to get comfortable, knowing I wasn't about to leave, then leaned forward and lowered his voice. Just try to picture the scene. The light is starting to fade, and of our original 5, there's 3 down, dead on first impact. We're half-starved, we have no orders, our squad leader was more or less obliterated in the hit. The rest of our army has drawn back. I'm missing a leg, and quite probably going to bleed to death in this crater beside our fallen comrades. The main body of the enemy's force is between us and our evac, which is leaving in less than half an hour. We have no reinforcements, the enemy is still actively shooting at us, and somehow, the only man in our squad still actually standing was our non-combat photographer. And this dumb son of a bitch just looks me right in the eyes and says, "Don't worry, I was on the track team." The general threw his hands up. That was it. That was all he told me. I of course had no idea what track was, or why I shouldn't be worried. When he slings me over his shoulder and starts running at the enemy lines. They're still shooting at us, mind. Camera in hand, bag over one shoulder, and my screaming 80-pound ass slung over the other. And here he is, running faster than I'd ever seen anyone in their life run. Past bunkers, past encampments, past vehicles, emplaced weaponry, lines and lines of enemy soldiers. The low light was helping, But honestly, I have no idea how none of them hit us, just from the sheer volume of rounds being sent our way. He was doing a good job of keeping us in some sort of cover as we moved, but there was only so many ditches we could run through, so many walls or trees we could hide behind, so many hills we could keep between us and them. It wasn't all as bad as that first dash. Once we'd made it through their battle line, there was enough chaos to at least reduce the amount of shots being sent our way, but it wasn't exactly a walk in the park either. I remember on one occasion, he ran past a building and found 2 soldiers in our path on the other side, waiting. I thought we were screwed, that our luck had run out, but that crazy bastard just ran at them, stepping up onto a sandbag and jumped over these armed-to-the-teeth 10-foot behemoths. I still wonder what they must have been thinking at that moment, as some scrawny little biped carrying a heavy satchel and a screaming Grisani almost twice his size sailed over their heads in the middle of their encampment. He shook his head. We just about made it to that evac, through 8 miles of enemy-controlled territory, before they managed to get that first hit in. Bag hit the floor and we went down hard. Luckily for us, we'd been running towards another crater, and that kept us out of sight for a little as we rolled down to the bottom. I tried to spring to my feet, before I remembered I only had one, and by the time I'd struggled into a vaguely sitting position, he'd already picked up the camera again. It was probably about when he moved to get a good shot of his now severed arm that I realized he'd been filming the whole time, that he'd been taping our mad dash through the countryside. I remember his face too, as he looked through the little window at that hunk of meat swimming in crimson. How his whole demeanor had changed as he realized what that would mean for our trip. I almost thought he'd picked the camera, and I don't even think I'd have blamed him. But damage made that decision a little easier. In the excitement, we hadn't noticed that the round wasn't a clean hit. It had smashed its way through the walls of his camera after punching a hole in his body, and the machine's innards were now open to the world. Most of the film was probably ruined the instant the round hit, but he threw it under his coat in a foolish hope that at least some of it was salvageable. Knowing he wouldn't be able to take the bag with us anymore, he'd grabbed all the digital chips and a couple of the smaller rolls of film. But that bag had been filled to the brim, and most of it wasn't going to be joining us. Almost as an afterthought, he'd pulled out a knife from his boot and cut the strap off the camera before sealing the bag again. I guess he realized he didn't need it anymore if he was leaving the bag behind. Only after he'd done all that did he bother to tie off the gaping hole where his arm should be. Things changed after that point. Before, I don't think he'd actually been taking it very seriously. Despite watching our comrades die, he'd still had that foolhardy, "won't happen to me" mentality that your kind is well known for. The fact that we'd made it as far as we had was probably encouraging the perspective. But I think seeing his baby smashed to pieces had been something of a wake-up call that he could no longer ignore. We'd set out again, but he'd lost the carefree attitude he'd had before. There were no more straight dashes. Now we weaved in and out of cover as he ran. Our center of gravity was lowered too. Despite his smaller stature, I had never had to worry about the ground during this first leg of the trip. Now I was in constant fear of it. By this point we were well past our half hour, so imagine my surprise when we arrived, the both of us drenched in my comrade's sweat, to see the bird still sitting there. Eyes above had been keeping tabs on us from the start of the fight, and they'd held our ride back on the off chance this merry chase wasn't a failure. They were after propaganda after all, and this story was perfect. A dash of incompetence on the enemy's part, a sprinkling of courage, and a liberal helping of praise for our newest ally. Plus, it was some no-name non-combatant instead of their honor guard doing the rescue against all odds on a hostile planet. It was exactly what they were after, and then some. Now, my understanding is that by your own standards, simply bringing an ally back through enemy fire is deserving enough of a Medal of Honor. Galactic standards are a little stricter, requiring that the feat also do something detrimental to the enemy. By that standard, this doesn't qualify. No, the reason he got a medal was because he went back for his bag. Alright guys, I hope y'all enjoyed that one. Go ahead and leave a like if you did. Go ahead and subscribe if you would like to see more of my stuff. And if you would like to get my videos directly in your subscription feed, hit that bell icon off to the side. And if you have anything that you want to let me know about, leave it in the comments. Alright, have a nice one, y'alls.